the Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Well, here we are 1 year later, folks. This is episode 52, and I am so happy to be here today. The special 1 year anniversary of Celebrity Jobber, and I want to dedicate this podcast to my best friend in the whole world, who I just lost the other day, my dog Teddy Bear Baby. 15 years old, almost just a shy 15 years. We loved him so much, and was such a huge part of my life and my wife's life. And unfortunately, it was time to say goodbye the other day, and I'll never forget him. My best boy, as I called him, and been a really tough week. So I definitely wanted to give a shout out to man's best friend, my best friend, Teddy Bear Baby. That's his full name. We just called him Teddy around the house. He had a lot of nicknames, but speaking of nicknames, my guest today, a national sports talk show host, and more importantly than that, female sports talk show host. Not many of those. This woman broke barriers down, okay, in the 80s and 90s. She was irreverent, loud, hated by some. She is a member of the National Radio Hall of Fame. One of the first times I've ever seen a radio show on TV in the 90s. She had a show on ESPN and ESPN2. Her show was heard in more than 500 cities in the United States and Canada and over 35 countries around the world. She is a legend in the radio biz, and as I just mentioned, a member of the National Radio Hall of Fame. Her name is Nancy Donnellan, but you know her as the Fabulous Sports Babe. My guest this week on Celebrity Jobber.
Hi, Bo. How are you?
The Fabulous Sports Babe.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm good, honey. I'm alive. That's good.
That is excellent.
Oh, yes.
You know, I got to say, first of all, thanks for doing this for me.
Sure.
And because I know you don't do a lot of these. I know you don't do a lot of interviews, and so I really appreciate it. And I just want to say, you were always so good to me when we worked together that short period of time. Just, you know, I looked up to you, and you just you just treated me, you know, very nice, and I never forgot that. You know, it meant a lot to me, and still does.
I'm surprised I was okay, because I'm usually kind of nasty to people. But it's okay now.
But you know what? That's who you were, you know, and that's who I thought I was getting. Is Nancy and the Fabulous Sports Babe two different people?
I think they are. I do. I feel that now too, that it's different right now than being the Babe, because the Babe had an attitude that had to roll on the whole time.
And like, when did you invent the Babe?
I was in Tampa, and we were at a radio station down there, and it had been more of like Mom, Sports Babe, and things like that. But I think that was like in the late 80s, because when I went to Seattle, it was just the Fabulous Sports Babe everywhere.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah, so that's the way it went. But I think probably for at least 2 or 3 years, I had been that already in Tampa in the late 80s. So
did you figure out early on that sports was the direction that you wanted to go to? I mean, were you a big sports fan? Was it broadcasting? What was it? But see, like, you know, I'm doing something that nobody else does, which is, you know, to have not only be doing sports, but I have a big attitude with it. Yeah. So I think that was really, you know, go with it all the time, but you had to be that person all the time. And when I used to go home, I'd have to chill for 2 hours before I talked to anybody. Right. Yeah. And kind of unwind a little bit and get back to yourself. Exactly. Right. So tell me how you got into sports radio, because what I have read was that you moved around a lot as a child. You didn't develop long-term friendships, and
None.
So tell me, growing up, you moved around a lot. You didn't have many friends?
Yeah, my father was in the Air Force.
Okay.
So that's why we moved around. And I have friends, but my friends right now are people from, a couple of decades ago, but I don't have any friends when I was in high school or college. I mean, I didn't do that. I just didn't have friends like that. It wasn't like I wasn't sitting on the side of the road.
Right.
But it was okay. I just didn't. I moved every 3 years or so until I really got to college. And college, it was okay, but I hated college anyway. But it was all right.
Did you kind of discover yourself in college?
I think that it was hard for me to do that because all I wanted to do was do sports all the time. And they thought maybe I wanted to do play-by-play. And I said, wait a minute, I can't do play-by-play. I'd be there saying it's 4th and 10, and they had a first down, and I didn't even see the first down.
Right.
I would not be good at this at all.
Right.
But I really wanted to do a talk show. And when I was in Boston, I worked at WEEI, which is a sports station, but was an all-news station. And I used to have to do sports 4 times an hour. And that would be good for me because it helped me write a bit. So I think that helped me a lot. But I always wanted to do sports.
Is it true, though, that your family wasn't maybe so supportive of your career choice? And you
Aren't you funny? Aren't you so funny about supportive of? No, they were not interested at all.
Okay. So is it true, because of your family not really supporting your endeavor to become a sports show, sports talk host, that you kind of did it out of spite?
I don't think I did it out of spite at all. It's what I wanted to do, and I had to be away from people and go and do it because I needed to do what I wanted to do. And if I hung around there, they'd have me doing something stupid, which I didn't want to do.
Do you think it's like my parents, my father would be like, when are you going to grow up and get a real job? Was it kind of like that?
Well, I think he probably was like that, but I never hung around much for them. So I kind of split early and knew that I wanted to do this, and I would get into it. And I knew what I was doing as far as football and baseball and everything like that. I knew what I was doing, but then to go into a talk show, and it was really good. And I think what happened in Tampa was really good for me, but what happened in Seattle and then to ESPN, it was totally different for me.
So before sports radio, before there was the fabulous Sports Babe, did you have another job before you got into broadcasting? What was your first job?
My first job in broadcasting?
No, first job ever in anything.
If you want to hear this, Jeff?
Yes.
I went to school in Tripoli, Libya, and I went to high school there. And
Okay.
The first place I ever had, I was working behind somebody in a grocery store. I must have been 15 or 16. And I'll never forget, the guy wanted condoms, and I didn't know what it was. I was like, what? And the woman said, get out of the way. And I said, oh, all right. Well, now I got it.
So was that your only job outside of broadcasting?
No. I mean, I worked in restaurants for a long time. And I always did that in between because let's admit it, everyone that ever gets into radio ends up getting fired.
No doubt.
So I had to do other things as well. And, you'd go somewhere, you'd be there for 2 or 3 years, and they said, okay, well, we're going to make it country music now. Okay, goodbye.
You're out.
Yeah.
And if you're worth...
That was going on. But then, I've only done that now for a really long time. And now that I think of it, it's been 35 years or something like that.
It's incredible because, I mean, first of all, Radio Hall of Fame is nothing to sneeze at. I also know that you almost won a Marconi Award twice. You were runner-up to a guy by the name of Rush Limbaugh and another guy called Howard Stern.
Right.
Not too shabby when, your Marconi Award, which is the highest honor in our business, pretty incredible. But I wanted to talk about the early days. Did you start in Tampa? Because I knew you grew up in Mass.
No, I grew up in Massachusetts, but I actually had that one at EEI, and then I had I was on overnights at a radio station here on Cape Cod, and then I was on from like 6 to 10, and I loved it, and it's fun, but that was not getting me where I wanted to go, so what I had to do was more sports. I mean, I wanted to do, so I'd maybe doing overnight somewhere, but still doing sports too. But at that time, I was going towards sports. I knew what I wanted to do. And, I remember I went to somebody in Providence, and the guy, he made us do something, a friend of mine and I went, and he wouldn't shake my hand.
Uh-oh.
I thought that was kind of weird.
Oh, yeah.
Me. But then I realized that there are a lot of people who don't want to shake your hand.
That's true. A lot of people don't want to shake my hand.
Yeah, right.
So you're in Massachusetts, you're in Cape Cod, you figure you move. When did you get can you consider, I would consider your big break, the ESPN radio, to me, because as a viewer or listener, I can remember in the mid 90s, that show being on at like 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon on ESPN and ESPN2. You were like one of the first radio people that they, put on TV. And I would imagine that was a big break for you, but was getting that ESPN gig your big break, or do you think there was some other things that led up to that?
Jeff, that was the worst mistake I've ever made.
Really? Tell me.
And
Tell me why.
I think that they probably feel the same way, too.
Well, why do you say that?
Because they were doing radio at night from like 7 to 1 o'clock in the morning. They were doing that on Saturday and Sunday. And then ABC, which owned ESPN,
right,
had been talking to me for a long time. And what they wanted to do was almost like, not Howard by any means, but to try and push the envelope a lot.
Okay.
You didn't have to say bad things, but I could.
Right.
That's why I had headphones on, so I didn't say bad things. But it was horrible for me, and it was horrible for them. And I think that they felt that ABC had put me in there, and they felt that people who had been there already that were working at night, they felt that should have been the first thing. And ABC wanted to do a different thing, but what ABC wanted and what ESPN wanted were totally different. Totally different.
Do you think do you think they were like trying to water down your brand?
Oh, you have no idea.
Okay.
They absolutely, if you want to use the brand, that was part of it. And, it was very weird because you're living in Bristol, Connecticut, yet the people are in New York that are selling you.
Okay.
And you're a couple hours, if not more, from Boston. So it was kind of a weird thing because I didn't understand why I had to be in Bristol, Connecticut, because I thought it should be more into New York. And, of course, everything now is in New York. Right, you can go up there and do your sports centers, but everybody's in New York now. But that's what I wanted 30 years ago, but they didn't want to hear about it then.
So before the ESPN deal, it was Seattle, right? You were really making waves in Seattle.
Great. That was just the best in the whole wide world. But the attitude and stuff you had to deal with, and I don't think they cared that much about it. They never had I guess they never had anybody that was sort of shock jock. And they were just appalled at me, which I loved. Those people had no idea of what I was like, and I made them crazy. But I loved being there, and I could have stayed in Seattle for a long time. But I knew that the attitude had to go.
Really?
The attitude was way too much there because they were still, they were calling me up 3 years later going, what? What is she saying? Well, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But I knew what I was doing, and it was making ABC really interested in what I was doing.
It's such an interesting story, too, because, I'm not even going to say a woman in the radio business because, I think that waters it down. You were, at this period of time, one of the biggest radio sports personalities, in the world. Man, woman, robot, whatever.
Yeah.
You were it. And it's funny to me how you say that the ESPN, which I would consider your big break because it gave you a national audience, and I was familiar with you where I was in Tampa, Florida. I knew who you were beforehand, but it really blew you up nationally. And I thought that was a big break. And you say, worst decision of your life.
Without a doubt.
Wow.
And probably for them, too.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think so. I can only tell you that ABC wanted something and ESPN wanted something different. They wanted to water me down incredibly. And I just, I was glad that I was on TV, but I couldn't deal with it. And,
right.
I'd be on the radio and I'd say, well, you're talking about somebody in baseball. And I go, the guy's hitting 300. They dragged me upstairs because the guy was only hitting 297. I swear to God.
Oh my God.
Kind of stuff I had to put up with. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, I've had program directors like that.
Everybody there is all radio, TV. They know what's going on. But at the time when I was there, most of the people there were mostly kind of the corporate type were more like they were like magazine editors.
Right, right.
It wasn't like radio and TV, and they didn't quite understand. And I think when I was there, I had some really good people who had been at FAN, and they wanted to do that. But every time I did something, it was something, it was ridiculous.
How did you get into sports, babe? Were you a kid, just followed it, watched with somebody that just got you into it? Because, you spoke about sports on a high level, not really common for a woman.
Well, not even that. It was, one of the things I found out is the guys in Vegas were always listening to me, because what I have now is you have sports radio all the time, but I was the first one on from 10 to 2 that was doing a national talk show. And it was great for me but I don't think I was mature enough to do what they were doing. I was, but I didn't really understand the real, I guess being in the big city was a big difference for me.
This book came out in 1996, The Babe in Boyland. And you basically, was it a little bit about your life story and then, some sports stuff and about the ride that got you to where you were at the time?
Well, I think that's what it was for. But once again, the people that were doing it were people that wanted me to do certain things there and be more of the babe throughout the book.
Right.
And, so, it would have been great if we had done it properly, but, I would have done that. It would have been fine, but ESPN wouldn't let me talk about the book on the radio.
Well, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that I had to put up with. So it was it. I was glad that I moved into ABC, and that's what I really wanted. And then a couple of years later, I got cancer, and that sort of changed everything for me.
Babe, you have had you have had some health issues for the last, I don't want to,
Let's talk about it. Honey.
How many years?
I'm alive.
It's unbelievable.
Alive. Yes, I know. I had cancer, and about 12 years ago, I had a really massive stroke.
Right.
And that was really intense. And then it's getting to the point now where my stomach didn't feel well, and I didn't know why. And I went to the emergency room, and I said, my stomach's funny. And the next thing I know, that was just before Halloween, and I didn't get up for 3 months. I was in a coma for 3 months.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And you talk about Roller Girl or Kathy. I used to call her up and say I knew what was going on, and she'd hang up on me and say, you don't know anything. And I'm going to be there in a minute. No, I wasn't going to be anywhere in a minute. But that was good. But I think it changed a lot for me because you talk about Cape Cod. I don't want to say anything, but it's 63 degrees as I'm sitting outside on the deck, okay?
Right.
So, when was the last time I saw 63 degrees?
Not in Tampa.
Right. And I've been visiting up in, there's a big reservation, an Iroquois reservation that goes from Canada into New York. It's a very big reservation, but I've spent a lot of time there. I've been able to finally do 6 and 6.
Wow.
And, yeah. So, and I really had to wait a long time. I should have done that before, but now I've been able to do it. It makes all the difference in the world now.
You sound great. You really, I remember when you went through the stroke. I didn't know you with cancer, and then I do know that, what was the most recent health scare that you had?
Actually, I think it will be next month. It was just before Halloween, and I went there, and I went into a coma and did not wake up till January of 2019.
And what was the coma from? Do you know?
They did something to my stomach, and I guess they had something. The person that did it was going to Germany the next day. I should have known then, right? When
Right.
the person's leaving. But that's what happened, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And then the next thing I know, I was in a coma, and I was gone for a number of months.
Man.
Actually, and I remember the doctor saying to my friends, going, is this really going to happen? And they were like, I don't know. And he would let the dog climb on top of me and let him be there for me. And, I have pictures of things when I came out of the coma, and a friend of mine was kind of videoing where people didn't see it from the nurses. And the first thing I said was, what the F happened to me? The first words out of my mouth.
Wow. It is.
I have so many things of the coma, of all kinds of things that happen in the coma. And I try and put that together, but I can't really make a story out of it.
Right. You still seem to me like you've got a lot to say. And in this world that we're living in, I've been in the radio biz for almost 30 years, but I've found a lot of success, believe it or not, doing this stupid podcast. Is there anything in your mind that you feel like you want to do something like that? Because it seems like you got a lot to say.
In 15 and 16, I did a podcast, and it was very funny because I would tell people, if you're going on the treadmill, you can listen to it for 20 minutes or something like that.
Right.
But then everybody else got into the podcast, but I was in a coma. Excuse me, I was in a coma. And so everybody else has gotten one, and I haven't done anything. And sometimes I wonder if what I have is maybe too old for what's going on right now.
Well, I don't think so, because you still have this this big personality, very recognizable, and I bet you still have every contact. One of the best things about listening to the Fabulous Sports Babe was picking up her cell phone and just calling somebody. And it was you had producers, but you also had these relationships with people that you're picking up your phone and just dialing them up and getting them on.
Well, and one of the things about it, because of the fact that I was the only one doing radio all the time. People might have had it in Tampa or Buffalo or whatever, but it was somewhat like FAN is what we were doing, but we hadn't done the other day parts that are there now.
Right.
And so because of that, I was on 300 radio stations at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think? So what do you think about where radio is today?
I think it's really different. I don't think it's so much. I don't think that not that I don't know, but I feel like it's very corporately done now.
It is.
And I'd be more of an idiot trying to be who I am. I'm not so sure that they would like that. I think many people would like it, and maybe ESPN would like it 30 years later, but they certainly didn't like it 30 years ago.
Well, you did something 30 years ago. You broke a lot of barriers, and for not only, like I said, a woman doing sports and talking sports, you had the attitude, and you had this thing that drew people in. And it was, it's incredible. Obviously, Radio Hall of Fame, that's a huge honor. We all, in this business strive to do something like that. You're there. It's just, it's incredible. I'm so glad that you were willing to come on with me again. I'm grateful and grateful that you were always nice to me when we worked together. Which, by the way, later in your career, worked on a station called The Fan, WHFS, in Tampa, and that kind of brought you. You were kind of semi-retired, right?
Yeah, but the thing for me, and I have to be honest with you, which is I was gone for like 4 months when I had the stroke, and I really wanted to see if I could still do it. So they put us on overnight at the old Beasley there, and they used to put us on overnight, and nobody would call us, and we used to run other people's stuff, but, we were out looking at the moon and things like that, so they didn't really care as long as we were on, and it was good, but I needed to know that I could still do it, and that's what I wanted to do, and we got it done. It was all right.
And you did. So now what? Is it just Cape Cod and St. Petersburg and laying by the pool?
Well, sort of, yeah.
Yeah?
Sort of, yeah. But I have to tell you, I'm bored to death.
Well,
I'm certainly sitting at 63 degrees in Cape Cod. Okay. So, but I'm bored, and sometimes I yell at the TV. And sometimes I think I'm really funny, and other times I'm not funny at all.
So you're bored, so you want to get back in somehow, I have a feeling.
I think that I could do like a couple of days. I told you what time I got up, so I don't really have to do anything in the morning.
Yeah, well, this is what happened yesterday when I texted Babe and I asked her to be on the podcast, and she says, well, what time? Because I don't get up before noon. And I was like, oh, this is great.
Well, and and today I got up at 1:30.
Oh, that's awesome.
Fantastic. Yes, that was pretty fantastic. But I just really, I like it. And when I'm seeing, football and stuff, I can say a lot of things, but I think I'm funny, and then other times I'm not so funny.
Well, I think the world of you. What do you think if it wasn't for this whole crazy wild ride, Fabulous Sports Babe, Sports Talk Radio? You ever think about what you would have done if it wasn't for radio?
Well, honey, if I didn't do radio, I'd be saying, you want fries with that?
So you don't think you were not having any kind of backup plan when you were in college? It was radio or bust.
No. I don't have a backup plan. I'm just here, and if it doesn't work out, I'll do something. But I wanted it to work, and I think I spent a lot of time in Tampa, which was great. And I just needed to, I think in the three things that happened to me, and I got to be honest, why am I alive? I have no idea, none whatsoever, but I am still alive, and I appreciate it because there are three times when they could have said goodbye to you, and they didn't.
They did not. What do you like to do, Babe, when, you're just chilling out? What is there anything that interests you outside of sports?
Well, sports is something that I do, but like yesterday I had the TV on, but I was playing on my computer and they would score and I'd look over at that Pittsburgh thing. And then I wish, it was there in the back, but it's not something that I want to see. I wish I could see the Bucks.
Right.
I can't because I have to see all Patriots all the time, but it's okay. I don't hate it.
What do you think about the Bucks this year?
Well, I think that there is Philadelphia coming. Is that what's going on?
Yeah,
now?
that's Monday night. Yeah.
Okay, well, you can kiss that goodbye.
Yeah.
They're not going to win that. But
yeah.
I think it was great that they won too. I had written to a couple of people that I know in the paper and stuff, and just said, hey, if they go 8-8, I will be very surprised.
I would too, but they're off to a pretty good start. Pretty surprising.
I think it's great, and the fact that they did what they had to do, I thought it was really good. And they have, Mayfield, however long you're going to be there, it's okay. But I figure everyone gets injured at some point. And do we have that guy from Trask? Is he still around? I mean, the only thing about Trask is You sat behind Tom Brady for 2 years, and you can't run this team?
Right.
Okay, how did that happen? What were you doing? Were you knitting? It seems to me that if he couldn't be your quarterback, you should say goodbye. But they got Mayfield, and it's okay. I mean, he did all right with Cleveland, but he's not winning anything.
It was such a great conversation, babe. I thank you so much once again. And if you ever feel like getting back into the game, you let me know. I'd love to be your sidekick.
Yeah, that would be good, a sidekick, because I thought to myself, I can't do it alone anymore, because everybody always had someone else with them, and I always had to do it alone. When I was at ESPN, they used to put people next to me that would give me information, like I cared about what these people were 3 games out in the baseball. I said, I don't care about that. Don't bother me. So,
Listen, thank you so much once again. I wish you nothing but the best, and you're the greatest. Thank you so much.
Jeff, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I do appreciate being on your show today.
It was radio or bust for the babe. As she said, no backup plan whatsoever. Growing up, she said her dad was in the military, so they kind of jumped around from place to place. She didn't have any friendships because of her constant moving. She said, she wasn't sitting on the side of the street or anything, but she didn't have a lot of friends growing up. And her family definitely didn't approve of her dream. They didn't support her in radio. But she found her niche, started in Massachusetts, moved around a little bit, Tampa Bay, ended up in Seattle. She became pretty huge and then signed a giant deal with ESPN Radio. Her sunglasses, her do-rag, she was loud. But she says that ESPN deal, as I tried to ask if that was her big break, she said no, that was the biggest mistake of her life. They tried to water down her brand. And if you're in radio and you're trying to stand out a little, be a little loud, trying to separate yourself from the rest of the herd, well, that wasn't going to work for the babe. She says, I believe her big break was Seattle. She thought that was like the dream. She loved it there and had a great run in Seattle before moving back to Tampa Bay and a lot of other radio stations. Huge health problems, as she mentioned, the stroke. She had cancer. She was in a coma. I mean, at 75 years old, she should not be here right now. But an unbelievable story. And again, glad to have her on. She doesn't do many interviews. And looking up to her as I was a younger broadcaster in the business, she was very nice to me. And I couldn't tell you how much I appreciated that, not only then, but now. She intimidated me, but she, called me honey and would have me on her show every once in a while, and great memories. And again, thank you so much to Nancy Donnellan, a.k.a. the Fabulous Sports Babe, member of the National Radio Hall of Fame. What an honor. What a great guest for number 52. 1 year later, Celebrity Jobber. Man, thanks so much for listening. A 5-star rating, I would totally appreciate that. Leave a review. Past episodes up on celebrityjobber.com. You can follow us on IG at Celebrity Jobber Podcast. And please listen to us anywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you pod, we are there. I got some great guests coming up in year 2 of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. Paul Rogers from Bad Company is coming soon. And hopefully this writer's strike coming to an end. So start amping up our guests again real soon. We turn 1 year old. Celebrity Jobber Podcast. Again, thank you so much for listening. Until next week, I'm Jeff Zito.